Making Kombucha. If you're a fan of this fizzy, tangy probiotic drink, good news, you can make it yourself and it's really quite simple. Don't let this Scoby scare you. I know it looks yucky, but it's packed full of beneficial bacteria and vitamins. So much so, the ancient Chinese called it the immortal health elixir. But first you need to gather the equipment. So find a large pot with a lid and or a tea kettle to steep the tea in, a measuring cup and 3 quarts of purified water, 1 gallon glass jar with a wide opening, a funnel and ladle, 1 cup of white granulated sugar, lemon and ginger to add flavor to that fermented tea, and organic green and black tea. I use 6 green and 2 black tea bags for my batch. And it's very important to keep things sterilized and sanitary. So I clean my jar with hot water and put it aside to cool off. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about the most important ingredient, the Scoby. I got mine from a friend. Scobies multiply, and once you start yours, you'll see what I mean. If you don't have a generous friend, you can buy them online or make one your own. Scoby is an acronym for Symbiotic Colony of Bacteria and Yeast. A Scoby colony or culture may also be referred to as a mushroom, possibly because it kind of looks like one, but it isn't. The culture might look fragile, however, it's really thick and leathery in consistency. Without this slimy thing, you couldn't even make kombucha. Here's how to do it. First, you take 1 quart of purified water and bring it to a boil. Tap water has chlorine and other impurities, so use filtered or purified water to remove as many additives, chemicals, and contaminants as possible. I'm using this water to brew my tea. Brewing kombucha requires real tea for both minerals and nitrogen. Use organic tea whenever possible to avoid chemical contaminants. I'm using 6 green and 2 black tea bags because I want less caffeine. The type of tea used to brew kombucha can affect the health of the Scoby as well as the taste of your finished brew. You will need to steep your tea for 15 minutes, then remove the tea bags and add 1 cup of sugar. Stir the tea until the sugar granules are dissolved. While it can be tempting to try to find ways not to use sugar in recipes, sugar is required for the fermentation process. If you use less sugar than required, you might just starve your Scoby. Keep in mind, the longer the kombucha is fermented, the less sugar remains. Transfer the sugary tea to your glass jar. This is where your funnel comes in handy. Add the additional 2 quarts of purified water to the mixture. Once the tea cools down to room temperature, add your Scoby with the starter tea to the brew. The starter tea is 10% of the kombucha you saved from the last batch. Now it's time for your Scoby to go to work. Cover the top of the jar with a coffee filter or a cloth and secure it with a rubber band. This allows your kombucha to breathe and keeps out unwanted flies, which can contaminate your brew. Put the jar somewhere warm and dark where it won't be disturbed. Temperature should be consistently at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit, or 86 degrees is best if you can manage that. Lower temperatures will make it grow slowly, but below 70 makes it more likely that unwanted organisms will start to grow too, and you don't want that. Label and date your jar so you remember when it should be done, and you can use a straw to test your kombucha for desired taste. Suggested fermentation is 7 to 10 days, but you gotta decide for yourself. You can brew kombucha up to 30 days. The longer it ferments, the tangier it gets, and the less sugar. You might see brown stringy bits in your tea. That isn't anything to be alarmed about. They are yeast particles and they're harmless, a natural byproduct of the fermentation process. You can strain them out of the finished kombucha if desired. If you see fuzzy white, black, or green things growing at the top of your batch, that's probably mold or a fungus, and you'll need to say goodbye to your Scoby and start all over. Mold needs air, so it won't be under your Scoby in the tea. Mold that grows on kombucha looks like the mold that grows on your bread, fuzz and all. Wait about a week. During this time, you can check on the tea periodically if you like. The culture will sink or float or do something in between. It does not matter. You should see at some point a new layer of culture growing on the top. Eventually, it will form a film covering the entire top of the tea. Okay, my kombucha is 8 days old now. I'm going to smell it. It has kind of an apple cider vinegar kind of smell. When the tea starts to get smelly like vinegar, you can taste it to see if it's at its best, and only your taste buds will know. The finished fermented product tastes something like cider with a nice fizz. Now it's time to add flavor and start the second fermentation if you desire more bubbles in your brew. Remember to make sure you wash your hands really well, clean your workspace, and keep everything sterile. I use hot soapy water or my dishwasher, followed by a rinse with distilled vinegar and a quick splash of hot water. I even wash my hands the same way. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to transfer that Scoby and 10% of the broth to a smaller glass container and just set that aside. Then pour the rest of your kombucha into glass bottles. Any glass container with a lid can be used to store kombucha, but to obtain the best carbonation level, it's important to bottle kombucha in truly airtight bottles. Flavored kombucha can be enjoyed immediately or fermented further for a more developed taste in the final product. Choose your favorite fruit, juices, herbs, or spices to make varieties of flavored drinks. I used freshly squeezed lemon juice with a couple teaspoons of freshly pressed ginger. Delicious. First, I just peeled the ginger with the potato peeler. I cut it into small pieces and I squeezed out the nectar with my garlic press. Then I scraped the ginger fiber out of the press and I started all over. Oh my gosh, ginger is such a delectable flavor for this kombucha. I'm telling you, with a splash of pungent lemon, I love this combination. You have to try it. Experiment to come up with the best ratios and combinations for your taste preferences. Now, once you've brewed your kombucha, you should avoid using anything metal, so I used a plastic funnel to transfer the liquid. Leave the bottled kombucha to ferment 2 to 14 days at room temperature. Now, this is advised not to go any longer than 14 days because the carbonation can build up. The more sugar in the flavoring, the faster the carbonation will build. You should burp your bottles occasionally during the second fermentation to release the excess pressure. Once the second fermentation process is completed, strain out any solids if desired, rebottle, and store on the counter or in your fridge. Now I'm going to try it. Kombucha. See. Oh wow. It's really tangy. Has a slight little sweetness to it. Delicious. You've got to try this. It's really good. Now that's not that hard, is it? And if I can do it, trust me, you can too.